William Bennett stood in the dusty attic of his late grandmother's Victorian house, surrounded by boxes and forgotten memories. The afternoon sun filtered through the small round window, casting golden rays across the wooden floorboards. He had been cleaning out the house for 3 days now, preparing it for sale. His grandmother, Eleanor Bennett, had passed away peacefully in her sleep 2 weeks ago at the age of 93. The attic was the last room to tackle. William wiped sweat from his forehead as he moved another stack of old newspapers. Behind them stood an antique mahogany desk that looked like it hadn't been touched in decades. The desk was beautifully crafted, with intricate carvings of roses and vines along its edges. William ran his fingers along the smooth wood, admiring the craftsmanship. He pulled open the drawers one by one. Most were empty except for some yellowed paper and dried ink bottles. As he reached for the bottom drawer on the right side, it stuck. William tugged harder, but it wouldn't budge. He knelt down to examine it more closely. There seemed to be something blocking it from inside. Using a letter opener he found in another drawer, William carefully worked around the edges. After several minutes of patient effort, he heard a soft click. The drawer suddenly gave way, but only part way. Behind it, he discovered another compartment, a hidden drawer cleverly concealed within the desk's structure. William's heart raced with curiosity. People only hid things they considered valuable or secret. He carefully pulled out the hidden drawer. Inside, wrapped in faded purple velvet, lay an object that made him gasp. It was a crown made entirely of thorns, twisted and woven into a circular shape. The thorns were dark brown, almost black with age, and each point looked sharp enough to draw blood. He lifted it carefully, feeling the weight of it in his hands. The crown was about 8 inches in diameter, perfectly preserved despite its obvious age. William had seen paintings and sculptures of crowns of thorns in churches and museums, but he had never seen one that looked so authentic, so ancient. Beneath the crown, he found a leather journal tied with a red ribbon. The leather was cracked and worn, and when he opened it, the pages released the musty scent of old paper. The first page contained a single sentence written in elegant cursive. "The truth must be preserved, even if it cannot be spoken." William sat back on his heels, stunned. His grandmother had been a quiet woman, a retired librarian who spent her days reading and tending her garden. She attended church every Sunday and volunteered at the local food bank. What was she doing with something like this hidden in her attic? He carefully turned the pages of the journal. Most entries were dated from the 1950 seconds, written in his grandmother's distinctive handwriting. But as he read, the words made little sense. They spoke of the brotherhood, the sacred duty, and protecting the relic. One entry particularly caught his attention. The 15th of October 1953. Father McKenna visited again today. He insists the crown must be moved. The rumors in Rome grow stronger. But I cannot betray the trust placed in me. The Bennett family has guarded this secret for generations. It will not end with me. William's mind raced. Father McKenna had been the priest at St. Mary's Church in town. He had died when William was just a boy. But what secret? What rumors in Rome? He continued reading, finding references to his great-grandfather, his great-great-grandmother, and ancestors he had never heard of. All of them, apparently, had been involved in protecting this crown. One entry from 1961 described a visit from Vatican representatives who had come searching for the artifact. His grandmother had successfully convinced them she knew nothing about it. The journal entries became more cryptic as they went on, filled with biblical references and coded language. William recognized some Latin phrases from his Catholic school education, but their context here was mysterious. One phrase appeared repeatedly: Corona Vera, the true crown. As the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the attic, William realized he had been reading for hours. His legs were numb from kneeling, and his back ached. But he couldn't stop. Each page revealed more questions than answers. The final entry was dated just 1 month before his grandmother's death. I grow weak. William is a good boy. Now a good man. Perhaps it is time. The burden has been heavy, but the truth is heavier. May God forgive us all. William stared at his name on the page. She had meant for him to find this. But why? And what was he supposed to do with a possibly ancient crown of thorns? He carefully rewrapped the crown in its velvet cloth and placed it back in the hidden drawer, along with the journal. Tomorrow, he would need to research, to understand what his grandmother had been protecting. But tonight, he could only sit in the gathering darkness of the attic, wondering what family secret had just been revealed to him and what responsibilities now rested on his shoulders. The next morning, William woke early in his childhood bedroom. He had barely slept, his mind churning with questions about the crown and his grandmother's journal. After a quick breakfast, he returned to the attic and carefully removed both items, wrapping them in a blanket and carrying them down to the living room, where the light was better. He started with research on his laptop, searching for information about ancient crowns of thorns and religious relics. Most results discussed the crown of thorns worn by Jesus Christ during his crucifixion. According to historical records, the original crown had been kept in Jerusalem, then Constantinople, before being moved to Paris in the 13th century. It was now housed in Notre Dame Cathedral, or what remained after the fire in 2019. But if the official crown was in Paris, what was this one in his grandmother's attic? William decided to visit the town library where his grandmother had worked for 40 years. The head librarian, Mrs. Chen, greeted him warmly. She had known Eleanor Bennet well and offered her condolences. "Your grandmother was a remarkable woman," Mrs. Chen said. "She knew more about this town's history than anyone. In fact, she left something for you." William's pulse quickened as Mrs. Chen led him to the archive room. From a locked cabinet, she produced a manila envelope with his name written on it, in his grandmother's handwriting. "She gave this to me about 6 months ago," Mrs. Chen explained. "Said I should give it to you if you came asking questions about family history." Inside the envelope, William found old photographs, newspaper clippings, and handwritten notes. The photographs showed his ancestors dating back to the 1800s. In several photos, he noticed a small symbol, a crown wrapped in thorns, embroidered on clothing or carved into furniture in the background. One newspaper clipping from 1889 caught his attention. It described the arrival of Father Antonio Bennet to the small Massachusetts town. The article mentioned he had come from Italy, bringing with him sacred treasures for the new church. William stared at the name. Bennet. His great-great-great-grandfather had been a priest. His grandmother's notes filled in more pieces of the puzzle. Father Antonio had not been just any priest. He had been part of a secret order within the Catholic Church, tasked with protecting religious artifacts that were deemed too dangerous or controversial for public knowledge. When tensions arose in Rome over these artifacts, several members of the order fled to America, each carrying one precious item. The crown of thorns that Father Antonio brought was not the one in Paris. According to the notes, it was believed to be the actual crown worn by Christ, hidden away by early Christians, and protected by a succession of secret guardians for nearly 2,000 years. The Church officially denied its existence, promoting the Paris crown as the authentic relic to prevent chaos and controversy. William spent hours in the library, piecing together his family's history. Father Antonio had eventually left the priesthood, married, and had children. But the duty to protect the crown passed down through generations. Each guardian swore an oath of secrecy, telling only one chosen descendant when their time came to an end. His research was interrupted by his phone ringing. The caller ID showed a number he didn't recognize. "Mr. Bennet?" The voice was cultured, with a slight Italian accent. "My name is Monsignor Giuseppe Toretti. I understand you have been making inquiries about your grandmother and certain historical items." Quote, William's blood ran cold. How could anyone know what he had been researching? "I represent certain interests within the Vatican," the Monsignor continued. "We would very much like to speak with you about your grandmother's estate." Perhaps we could meet. William's mind raced. The Vatican, just like in his grandmother's journal, they were still looking for the crown. "I'm not sure what you mean," William said carefully. "I'm just cleaning out my grandmother's house." There was a pause. Mr. Bennett, your family has been known to us for many years. We respected your grandmother's wishes while she lived. But now, circumstances have changed. The Holy Father himself is interested in recovering certain items that belong to the church. William ended the call, his hands shaking. He gathered up all the documents and photographs and hurried back to his grandmother's house. He needed to think, to understand what he was dealing with before anyone else got involved. That evening, he sat with the crown before him, studying it in the lamplight. The craftsmanship was crude but powerful. Each thorn had been carefully selected and woven. Some showed dark stains that could have been ancient blood. The weight of history, of possibility, was overwhelming. He opened his grandmother's journal again, this time paying attention to entries he had skimmed before. She wrote about tests that had been conducted secretly in the 1,960 seconds. A small sample of the thorns had been carbon dated by a trusted scientist. The results had confirmed an age consistent with the 1st century CE. The wood was from a plant species native to Jerusalem. Another entry described a visit from a biblical scholar who had examined the crown. He had pointed out details that matched descriptions in ancient texts not included in the official Bible. Texts that the church had long suppressed. William found a letter tucked between pages, written in Latin. Using an online translator, he slowly worked through it. It was from a Vatican cardinal to his grandmother, offering her significant compensation and the eternal gratitude of the church if she would surrender the crown. Her response was written in the margin, "Some things are beyond price. The truth most of all." As night fell, William heard a car pull up outside. Through the window, he saw a black sedan with tinted windows. 2 men in dark suits got out and walked toward the front door. The doorbell rang. William quickly wrapped the crown and journal, his mind racing. His grandmother had protected this secret her entire life. She had trusted him with it. But what was the right thing to do? The doorbell rang again, followed by firm knocking. William made his decision. He grabbed the wrapped artifacts and headed for the back door, slipping out into the darkness of the garden. Whatever the truth about this crown, he wouldn't let it be taken from him until he understood why his family had guarded it for so long and what his grandmother wanted him to do with her sacred burden. William spent the night in a motel 30 miles from town, the crown and journal hidden in a backpack beside his bed. He had turned off his phone after receiving a dozen calls from unknown numbers. Sleep came in fitful bursts, filled with dreams of thorns and shadows. In the morning, he drove to Boston to meet with Dr. Sarah Hoffman, a professor of religious studies at Harvard, whom he had found mentioned in his grandmother's papers. She had been one of the few scholars his grandmother had trusted with knowledge of the crown. Dr. Hoffman's office was cluttered with books and artifacts from various religions. She was in her 70s, with sharp eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. When William explained who he was, her expression grew solemn. "Eleanor told me this day would come," she said, closing her office door and drawing the blinds. "Show me." William unwrapped the crown on her desk. "Doctor," Hoffman put on white gloves before touching it, her hands trembling slightly. She examined it with a magnifying glass, occasionally making small sounds of amazement. "Extraordinary," she whispered. "In 40 years of studying religious artifacts, I've never seen anything like this. The preservation, the construction method, the patina on the thorns. Everything is consistent with 1st century craftsmanship." She showed William details he had missed, tiny fibers caught in some thorns that appeared to be from ancient fabric, possibly a burial shroud. Microscopic analysis had revealed pollen from plants that grew only in Jerusalem during that time period. "Your grandmother first brought this to me in 1978, Dr. Hoffman explained. "We conducted every non-invasive test available. The results were unsettling for someone of faith. This crown appears to be authentic, more authentic than any crown of thorns in any cathedral or museum." William leaned forward. "But how is that possible? How did my family come to have it?" Dr. Hoffman opened a filing cabinet and pulled out a thick folder. "Your grandmother and I researched this extensively. The story goes back to the early days of Christianity. When Christ was crucified, his followers took various items: the crown, nails, pieces of the cross. They hid them from Roman authorities. She showed him ancient documents, photocopies of texts from monastery libraries across Europe. The crown was smuggled out of Jerusalem before the city fell in 70 CE. It passed through Syria, Turkey, Greece, eventually reaching Rome, but it was never given to the church authorities. The early Christians who protected it believed the institutional church would use it for political power rather than spiritual truth. The crown had been protected by a secret line of guardians for centuries, hidden in various locations across Europe. During the Crusades, when religious fervor reached dangerous heights, the guardians feared the crown would be used to justify violence. They created a false crown, allowing it to be discovered and eventually placed in Paris, while the real one remained hidden. Your ancestor, Father Antonio, was one of the last official guardians from the Old Brotherhood, Dr. Hoffman continued. When the Vatican began investigating rumors of the true crown in the 1882, he fled to America. The church has been searching ever since. William stared at the crown, trying to process the magnitude of what he was hearing. So the Vatican knows this exists? They suspect, but they can't acknowledge it publicly without admitting they've been displaying a fake for centuries. The political and religious ramifications would be catastrophic. Faith for millions could be shaken. There was a knock at the door. Dr. Hoffman's assistant peered in. Dr. Hoffman, there are some gentlemen here who insist on speaking with you. They say they're from the Vatican. William grabbed the crown, but Dr. Hoffman placed a calming hand on his arm. Let them in. It's time for truth. Monsignor Toretti entered with another priest. His eyes immediately found the crown on the desk, and he crossed himself. So it is true, he said softly. The Corona Vera exists. What followed was a tense negotiation. Monsignor Toretti explained the Vatican's position. They wanted to secure the crown, study it privately, and decide how to proceed. They offered William a substantial sum, promises of papal blessings, and guarantees of his family's privacy. But William remembered his grandmother's words. Some things are beyond price, the truth most of all. What gives you the right to hide this from the world? William asked. If this is really the crown Christ wore, doesn't humanity deserve to know? The Monsignor's face was pained. Faith is a delicate thing, Mr. Bennett. Sometimes protecting it requires difficult choices. The Church has shepherded billions of souls. Would you risk their faith for one artifact? Artifact? Dr. Hoffman spoke up. Perhaps there's another way. The crown could be studied by independent scholars, its authenticity verified by multiple sources. The truth could be revealed gradually, carefully. For hours they debated. William learned more about his family's history, about the sacrifices his ancestors had made to protect the crown. He understood now why his grandmother had been so secretive, why she had carried this burden alone for so long. Finally, as the sun set over Boston, William made his decision. The crown stays with me for now, he announced. But I won't hide it like my family did. Dr. Hoffman, I want you to assemble a team of scholars, historians, scientists, theologians from various faiths. Let them study it. Let them publish their findings. The world can decide for itself what to believe, Monsignor Toretti protested. But William stood firm. My grandmother protected this crown because she believed in truth. Not the Church's truth, or anyone else's truth, but the actual truth. That's what I intend to honor. Over the following months, William worked with Dr. Hoffman to establish proper protocols for studying the crown. News of its existence slowly leaked to the academic community, creating intense debate. Some scholars proclaimed it authentic, others remained skeptical. The Vatican officially stated they were monitoring the situation with interest. William moved the crown to a secure facility where it could be properly preserved and studied. He established a foundation in his grandmother's name, dedicated to the scholarly study of religious artifacts. The crown became available for legitimate researchers to examine, though always under careful security. On the first anniversary of his grandmother's death, William stood in the cemetery by her grave. He had brought photos showing the crown being studied, articles about the ongoing authentication process, and a letter from a young seminary student who said the crown's existence had deepened his faith rather than shaken it. "You gave me a choice, Grandma," William said quietly. "Hide the truth or share it. I hope I chose wisely." As he walked away, William felt the weight his family had carried for generations finally lifting. The crown of thorns was no longer a secret burden, but a bridge between faith and history, mystery and truth. His grandmother had been right. Some things were beyond price, and sometimes the greatest act of faith was letting others find their own path to truth. The crown now rests in a climate-controlled chamber, available for study but protected from exploitation. Scientists continue to analyze it, theologians debate its significance, and believers make their own decisions about what it means. William occasionally visits it, running his fingers along the case that holds it, remembering the day he found it in a hidden drawer and everything changed. The Bennett family's centuries-old secret had finally been revealed, not with scandal or conflict, but with the careful, patient pursuit of truth that Eleanor Bennett had embodied her entire life. The crown of thorns had emerged from the shadows, and with it, a new chapter in the eternal human quest to understand the divine.